2 people have died in French territories as Hurricane Irma slams into the Caribbean, bringing with it a catastrophic mix of powerful winds and heavy rain. The Category 5 system is the most powerful storm ever measured in the Atlantic, and it's headed towards Puerto Rico and the US.
US President Trump says extra funding is going to be made available in addition to what has been made for Hurricane Harvey.
Packing 185-mile-an-hour winds, Hurricane Irma made landfall in the Caribbean early Wednesday, barreling into the island of St. Martin. The storm flooded a harbor, stranding cars. Irma is the strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Atlantic. This is the view from the eye of the storm. In Puerto Rico, the island's 3.4 million residents braced for the worst. The head of the power company says parts of the island could be in the dark for weeks or even months afterward. Irma is still days away from the U.S. mainland and is now tracking more east.
The storm is bigger, faster, and stronger than Hurricane Andrew.
Mandatory evacuations are already in effect for the Florida Keys, forcing people to get in their cars and leave. Elizabeth Prado lives in the Keys. This is the first time in 51 years she's evacuating.
I've been through George, been through Andrew, been through Wilma, but I'm not staying for Irma. No, not happening.
And in Miami, residents filled up sandbags. State officials are urging residents who live in low-lying areas in Miami-Dade County to start evacuating as well, although it is not mandatory.
The High Court will decide today whether the government's same-sex marriage postal survey will go ahead.
Amy, the judgment expected to be handed down during question time, so we'll get some immediate reaction from the floor of Parliament. So what is a very big decision in the context of the government's year? It really does need the High Court to uphold this same-sex marriage postal survey. Otherwise, a plan C needs to be found. Let's get the latest from Sky News political reporter Tom Connell.
The first hurdle for the High Court to consider is, do the people bringing this case actually have the legal standing to do so? The Solicitor General, Stephen Donoghue, says they don't, including even those people personally affected by same-sex marriage. He says that for 2 reasons. First of all, because it's not the ABS that is going to cause any sort of offence or insult people. That would possibly come from third parties, but the ABS essentially can't be blamed for that. And the other part about this is he denied the claims from the plaintiff that essentially what this postal survey would do would judge the relationships. He says the current law, in fact, judges relationships, and this is simply asking people what they think about that. Interesting to note, one contribution there from one judge said that when you're talking about testing constitutional powers, perhaps we need some flexibility. The next part of the argument, of course, do they have legality for the funding of this through this special advance to the Finance Minister? It was put by Stephen Donoghue that this is all very much above board. He used examples of where else this has been used, for art centres, for rowing centres as well, and he says this is ordinary government business. Why is it legal as well? Well, he says because Parliament passes a bill to this effect every year, so this does not, counter to what the plaintiffs were saying, bypass the Parliament. So that's another key part of this argument. The final one, of course, can the ABS actually run this survey? We know they're supposed to gather statistics. Well, the argument was that they are gathering statistics. Any number is a statistic, and the definition of that has changed since the original Act back in 1905. The argument, incidentally, from the plaintiffs is that, well, when it comes to statistics, it's not so much the gathering of them we have a problem with, but the direction that's been given on this matter. They say this is unprecedented, the way the Treasurer has given very specific direction. They say that amounts much more to a vote. And on a side note, there was a comment from the Commonwealth that this could still happen, even if the funding is found to be illegal, that it could still happen because the Treasurer, Scott Morrison, gives a separate direction to the ABS. The problem then, of course, where does the money come from? It would be more than 1/3 of the ABS budget, so that would be a separate problem. The government is, of course, hoping it won't happen. We'll find out at 2:15 p.m. here in Melbourne. Tom Connell, Sky News, Melbourne.